Arr, Pirate fans, it's time to find out the state of the ship of your defending champions for the 2022 season with your hosts, Johnny Wolver and Jake Ignaszewski. And now, brought to you by Resonate, it's the state of the ship.
Welcome back into the state of the pirate ship. Greatly appreciate everybody tuning into this week's episode. I am your host, Pirates Insider Jake Ignaszewski, and this week we have a very special guest. He's the founder of Spiked Performance Consulting, and he also is the mental performance consultant for the Pirates. I'm here with David Marsh. So David, first of all, how's the season been going so far?
So far, the Pirates are up one, starting off the year right. So, from a performance standpoint or from a number standpoint, it's looking good.
Couldn't agree more. And, one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to talk to you today is obviously, most people look at the physical health as being very important. But in my opinion, it's the physical health and the mental health, which are equally important. And for the most part, when you see what the guys do out on the field, most of that comes internally within how they're feeling mentally. And so for your specific role with the Pirates, when people hear mental performance coach, sometimes they don't really understand or get to hear about all the ins and outs of everything that you do for the players and the organization. So if you can just explain a little bit that for the listeners. Yeah,
I think to your point, the mental side of life is extremely important. Your brain is essentially a computer. And I say that to say, computers get updates all the time, firmware or whatever, if that's the correct terminology. Your phone gets updates all the time, over-the-air updates. And so we're constantly learning, we're constantly trying to make things better. And then also there's a mind, body, and spirit connection. And so you can't have one without the other, or it's very irresponsible to pay attention or nurture and foster one and not the other. And so in terms of my role here, I'm the person, or I'm the coach that essentially helps people fine-tune their brain to connect with their body so they can perform to the best of their ability as often as they can. And sometimes that looks differently. It could be a one-on-one session. It could be a 5-minute, 30-second conversation, that changes someone's outlook on a particular performance topic or an issue that they may be dealing with. And so, what I do presents a couple of different ways, and it's a lot of behind the scenes work. Consultants, mental skills coaches. A lot of the work we do is not visible, which is, similarly in the clinical world as I'm a counselor, there's confidentiality to it, and then, everything's kind of behind a closed door.
Makes sense, and especially when looking at sports and sometimes with men as well, it's tough for men to open up, be vulnerable, and talk about their feelings at times, and especially when you get new players in and that sort of stuff. How do you try to help them feel comfortable and understand how you can help them out?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up about how males talk about their emotions. I was just speaking at a conference yesterday, and that came up. I actually brought that point up in terms of talking about body image and performance, as a mental obstacle that also becomes, sometimes a physical obstacle. And so for me, how I approach the work is everything's built on a relationship. All journeys with people are built on a relationship, whether it be business, whether it be personal. And so for me, it's all about establishing a connection, some kind of understanding, right? Some framework and foundation in which good work can be done on. And so that's how I like to bring myself to the party, so to speak. Got to be present as often as possible. And then, just for me, I just bring my true self to the party. I care about the work I do deeply. And once I start working with people, I care about them deeply. I care about people in general. But this being my second year in the Pirates organization, I have a lot of love and respect for Jawad and his family, and a lot of respect for the coaching staff here, and the culture that they're breeding. And, for me, I just try to stay connected to the people, which is in turn connected to my work, and it fuels the work I do. So long-winded, how I help people feel welcome. Really, this is their home, right? And I come in as somebody who only wants to help make things better for each individual. So that way the community, the Pirates community, at least the performance side of it, is in a better state.
Very true. I couldn't agree more. And, obviously, it's amazing what the Pirates have built throughout the last year. Obviously, they won the championship last year. But I'm curious, because you were with the team last season, especially early on. They started the season 3-3. And now, obviously, they're on a 12-game winning streak. But going through those lows can sometimes, minimize some of the players' confidence going into the next game, or hurt sort of their mental strength or their mental performance on the field. And so how, during that instance, were you able to help the guys be able to build up that confidence and be able to help them perform at a high level, even though maybe in the standings they were losing a little bit?
I want to say that early on, from my lenses, not the ones I got on today, from the performance lenses, I could see, and I could tell that others could see as well, in terms of the coaching staff, that you had, there was a unique group of men assembled. And so even through the losses, I think everybody knew that this was a damn good team, if I could say that, in that it had championship potential. I mean, I remember having a conversation early on saying, I've been around some winning bodies of people, some winning groups of people, and it gave me that feel early on, and so I didn't see a lot from what I saw. I didn't see a whole lot of head hanging, and then as the season progressed and the fellas got to know each other more, you can see the social component of performance and things, the factors that help a team, become a cohesive unit, and a unit that performs at an optimal level. You saw those things start to come into place, and so I thought that was remarkable. I thought that was part of the formula for something special here in Worcester.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense, and especially if specific players, aren't, performing to their potential in their minds, or maybe struggling a little bit. How do you help them through your work and through maybe some of those one-on-one sessions or those short conversations? Help them be able to, through their mental performance, be able to build back up that confidence if they're not feeling that well about themselves.
Yeah, I mean, so firstly, the work that I'm here to do only works if somebody wants to do it or engage in it with me, if they want to allow me that space to come in and help, And so that's first and foremost with the work that I do. And then secondly, it's all a matter of sitting down, like I said, developing a relationship, developing an understanding, as comprehensive of an understanding as I can about what's going on, and then I can start to develop a plan that we can roll out together and practice. It's so mental skills are just like physical skills. You have to practice them. You need to learn about them. You need to believe in what you're doing, and you need to practice. And so, in short, that's the skeleton of it. But for sport and performance psychology, we deal with a host of things, a host of performance issues, whether it be anxiety, whether it be the quality of the relationships between 2 players, 3 players, a player and a coach. So in general, those are some of the things that we speak to: confidence, culture. Those are some of the things that we speak to, work on either individually or collectively or in a group setting. And again, like I said, sometimes it may not even be a planned session, It's arena football, so you might catch a guy. I go to practices sometimes, right? And so you might catch a guy leaning over the boards, and what up, Dave? I might see him later in the practice and say, "How you doing, man?" Hey, man, XYZ. You might talk about family. You might talk about an injury that's plaguing or something other like, and this field is so powerful. Sometimes when you have that little bit of time, you really have to be very intentional, very focused, and bring all of you to it, and so that's what I try to do. I try to do my best. I try to do no harm. I just try to contribute to the well-being of each individual that I get a chance to speak to. And even if I'm a smiley guy, so you might catch me smiling a lot. That's just part of what I bring to the party. So those are some of the little things that I do. Without giving you all my sauce, those are some of the things that I do to further the performance agenda. Yeah.
I think that's so important too, especially being able to have that person on a team where you're able to go to and be able to, push things by them as well as be able to have that person or that outlet that you're able to be vulnerable with, because you sometimes see, as we talked about with men's mental health, you sometimes see even close friends, close family, they don't fully feel comfortable to let out all their feelings, and to be able to have somebody like yourself on the team is definitely super duper important, so then they can be at their peak performance on the field. You brought up earlier in the interview about how passionate about this stuff that you are, and how important this work is to you. And so how did you first start getting into not only mental health skills and also counseling performance as well?
Yeah, so for me, I grew up in a place about an hour away from here called Mattapan. It's in Boston, a town in the city of Boston. And so at a certain age, I was relatively young. This was before high school, I think middle school. I started to recognize, because it's an area where you got a lot of crime. And so I started seeing different behaviors in some people that were younger than me that didn't quite make a lot of sense to me, why over time things didn't get better. Things sometimes got worse. And so for me, I used to be a system thinker. I used to be probably deeper than I am now, I would say, in some ways as a child. And so I used to think about the system. I used to think about the mental health system or the healthcare system as I learned more. And so for me, I kind of naturally drifted into the world of service. My first job was with the Boston Youth Fund. Shout out Mayor Menino, rest in peace. And I was a counselor. My next job, I was a peer counselor. You know what I mean? And so my senior capstone project in high school was, I think, about the inadequacies in the mental health field in inner cities. And so, for me, I just kept falling into that. I went to college, studied psychology, ended up getting a job. I kind of climbed the ranks in terms of, I think I did everything you could do before you become an actual counselor, a licensed professional. And so while in college, I was exposed to sports psychology formally. So I want to let everybody know that if you're an athlete, if you're a performer, and even if you're not, you have used a mental skill that you can find in the sports psychology world or in the clinical psychology world. Guarantee it, whether it's talking to yourself in a negative way or in a positive way. You've used a skill. Goal setting, you've used a skill. Guarantee it. And so back to the point I kind of got off a little bit, but so I got formally introduced to mental skills training by someone who wasn't a sports psychology practitioner. They introduced us to it, and I had already been using this stuff without really knowing it. And so once I got a taste of that, I was like, okay, wow, all right. Visualization. That was like something that I learned, and it was powerful, man. It was powerful. And so once I learned that, by happenstance, I found an athletic director came in, and I don't know how we got to talking about sports psychology, but he introduced me to a woman, Dr. Amy Baltzell, from Boston University. And I got in touch with her early. I was still an undergrad. So she's like, oh, this is a graduate program. So, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay. A year later, I popped back up in the inbox. Oh, wow, this dude, So I drove into Boston I went to school in Central Mass, Anna Maria. I drove into Boston just to sit down and talk, because I really believe in talking with people. At some point, I applied. I got into the counseling and sport and performance psychology grad program at BU. It was a difficult program. I loved every second of most of it. And, I never looked back since. She told me you got the keys to the car once I got my degree. And, from then I just kind of started figuring out how I could do my own thing. While after I got out of school, I became a counselor. I did some in-home family therapy for a couple years. Transitioned to the adult world as a clinician. And, I'm still moving. I'm still shaking in the clinical world, But, yeah, that's kind of how I got into sport and performance psychology. I kind of tripped and fell into it. And I got really lucky to meet some people that could kind of help point me in the right direction. And then from there, fate be it, or the higher power be it, because I'm not a school guy. I got into a great program, and I met some great people, and I got to do some great things. And I hope that I can continue to do good or great things and improve, But that's kind of how I got it shaken.
That's really inspirational, man. Because I've done a little bit of manifestation stuff in my past, and I sort of visualize this. I visualize myself being a digital host or a team reporter for a sports team. I remember a year ago, like I could visualize myself doing it with the microphone in my hand, just like this, and especially to where you got to, where you are today. For people who are watching and listening, they're definitely very inspired by your story, and I'm curious what inspired you so much to get into sports psychology, because it's so interesting with how, like we talked about before, how the mental performance connects so much with the physical performance, and I feel like it's a subject that isn't talked about nearly enough. So I'm just curious what made you so intrigued by it.
So for me, I like the hard sciences, but I've spent a lot of time and money on education for the soft sciences, mental health, sports psychology. To me, it was just very attractive. To me, it's kind of like the rock stars of the clinical world. Some might argue differently, but I love it, So for me, it's once I got a taste of doing the work, it didn't feel like work. It's just a feeling that I want to continue to chase, for the rest of my life. And so once I had my first team, which was a college track and field team, that kind of similarly to when I was doing family therapy, like being able to connect. I value relationships, being able to connect, develop connections, and to be able to be of service and help people along the way. It's powerful stuff when you can do it and when you can do it well. And, it's just something that I think that as long as I can do it and it doesn't feel like work, then why stop? So for me, so it goes. I got introduced to it. I felt its actual power, its efficacy. I wanted to preach that. I did, and I do. So I kind of just want to continue to keep preaching that good word of sports psych, mental skills. They do work. You're using them. They have worked, So that's kind of where I'm at with it, and that's why I stayed in this field. And statistically speaking, it was 3 years ago, maybe like 6 years ago, it was 3% of people who study sports psychology actually make a living of it, on it, from it. And so, even knowing that, I still chase it, it's like life, man. You got to fight for what you want. And I tell kids, I was working in a public school. I do some work in public schools. And so, like I was telling some of the kids I was working with, like, you got to fight for the rest of your life. And I don't mean all your life you'll have to fight. I mean, for the life you want, you'll have to fight for it. So for the rest of your life, the life you want, you got to fight for it. And so, for me, this is one of those things where, there's something I want for the rest of my life. If there's a girl or a guy you want for the rest of your life, you're going to have to do things. If there's a career you want, you're going to have to do things, right? If there's a house you want, you're going to have to do things for that, If there's a state of mind you want, you're going to have to work for it. You know what I mean? So that just speaks to the power of the mind. I believe in the power of the mind. I believe in what I do. I believe in sports psychology, counseling, because that presents or works in many forms. So, long story short, that is why I'm in the field I'm in.
I love it. And I just think it's so important. And, lastly, I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about your company, Spike Performance Consulting, what you do with them as well. Yeah,
so Spike Performance Consulting was a brainchild of mine. And how it functions is it provides sport and performance psychology consulting services, as well as character development services. And that comes in the form of, interwoven in that is teaching personal and social responsibility, which is a motto from this great guy, Don Hellison, which I picked up from Dr. J Mac, Dr. John McCarthy. Shout out to J Mac, great guy. And so it can present in one way or two ways. I can present just or serve just one service, the performance side of it. I could present or service or render the character development side of it. Or they can be interwoven, naturally. In a lot of instances, they get interwoven, even if somebody wants just one. Unless somebody really just wants one, then that's just what it's going to be. Elite athletes tend to want, solutions quickly. So that's kind of how that goes when you're dealing with, elite college, elite athletes at whatever age, doesn't matter. And so the other side of it is, the zipper that kind of holds it all together behind the scenes is, there's a strong community service bone that runs through the company's body. I like to do work with youth. In the past year, we kind of got away from that a little bit. COVID, past 2 years, I was doing some work with the Boston public school system right before COVID came, and that kind of capsized the boat a little bit. Maybe I can get back to that. Who knows? But, there's a strong community service bone in the company, and we like to do positive youth development work. Done some work with youth lacrosse, which once was Metro Lacrosse. It's now Harlem Lacrosse. And for me, so my clinical and sport intersection, which lives in the company, is contributing to positive identity development. And it mostly pertains to young black and brown kids that are subject to areas of high crime. So areas like I'm from, Mattapan, Dorchester, Roxbury, whatever, Compton, it doesn't matter, all across the world really at some point. And so, you got this maladaptive identity formation process. And so one of my goals, company goals, life goals, is to be able to start making people more aware of how we can pull out some of the maladaptives and put in adaptive strategies, especially with the emerging minds, the youth, So you get the youth, you get the future. And so you want to develop this healing culture, this more aware culture, and then you want that to be contagious. You want people to be personally responsible, and then you want them to be socially responsible. You want them to pass that along to, their neighbor. And so that is also a large part and an idea, a part of the light that lives in the soul of this company, So the performance stuff is easy to talk about. The character development stuff is easy to talk about, but really doing that 11th toe work is also a part of something that we're trying to grow. So
that's amazing, man. And also what you do with the Pirates is amazing. I feel like every second of the day we're trying to learn more about ourselves, trying to figure out what this earth is, and try and learn more about our minds. But I think like I said, what you do with the Pirates is so important, and helps the guys on the field with their performance in immense ways, from, like we talked about, ways that people don't even really get to see on the outside. And I really appreciate you taking the time to explain that to our listeners and our viewers today. But really appreciate everybody tuning into this episode of the State of the Partnership. This is David Marsh. He's going to be helping us out throughout this season. And make sure to subscribe on whatever audio platform that you're listening to. We also post on YouTube. I'll talk to you guys and see you guys next week.